Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today with Lieutenant Savannah Raskey. She is a pilot of the F-35 and she's in the military, and we're going to hear all about her. She also has, what kind of name would you call Sista? Is that like your pilot name that you get assigned?
Yeah, so it's called your call sign, and
Your
that's
call,
what
okay.
you're given essentially.
That is awesome. Anyway, we have not really officially met until now on video, and I heard from her about a week ago, and she had ended up listening to my book Lady Flyer, which is about Nancy Harkness Love and the WASP aviators from World War II. And she had just reached out and said she enjoyed the story, and it was great to learn a little bit more about women in military history. And I was just totally like geeked out about it. So I said, "Hey, can we do a video interview and I can share just kind of what your journey is becoming a pilot, and just share it with my readers, and I think they'll find it super interesting." So welcome. And
Thank
if you want to
you.
just like start out, just kind of tell us a little bit about your background, maybe growing up and kind of when you first started getting interested in flying.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. To begin, I grew up in a military family. My dad was an F-16 pilot, and it was kind of always in our blood, aviation. But being a typical child, I just hated everything my dad told me to do. So I really did not want to fly. It was not something I thought I was capable of. I actually had a school project in high school where we did an alphabet about ourselves, and under the letter F, I put fly. Hate it, never want to do it in my life, rather die. I wrote that out. And so no one ever expected me to be a pilot. My brother was a pilot. He went to the Air Force Academy. But when I was 18, I decided to enlist in the military because I just felt like I wanted to do something bigger with my life, kind of gain some confidence and courage. So I enlisted in the Utah Air National Guard in
Okay.
maintenance. And I did that for 10 years. And during that time, I was flying civilian. I'm fortunate enough, I have a little plane. It's a Cherokee 6. So it's kind of like flying on the side, getting my ratings. But after being enlisted for 10 years, I just thought, I want to do something more. I think I can give more. And my brother, one of my other brothers, he's a PJ. So he's a paratrooper for the Air Force. So the guys that jump out of helicopters, rescue people, super big hero in my eyes. And so I'm like, I want to do something more and like help protect those guys on the ground. And
Yeah.
so I decided to go on the journey of trying to become a military pilot. And being in the Guard is a little bit different. You basically get hired by a unit to fly that specific plane. And so I was like, okay, if I want to be a fighter pilot, I got to make sure that I'm super qualified, the most qualified I could be. I knew I got airsick a lot, so I took some aerobatic lessons to beat it
Yeah.
out of myself. I just wanted to do everything I could to be undeniable during the interview process. It took about 2 years going from base to base, putting yourself out there. You're kind of rushing like a sorority fraternity. You're like, hey, pick me, I'm really cool. And eventually, I was blessed to get hired by Montgomery, Alabama. They're the 100th Fighter Squadron. And what I love about them is that they're the Red Tails. So we took on
Mhm.
the history and legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. So being the only female pilot there as well, it's just cool to have that legacy to like carry on your shoulders. It makes you just want to work really hard. So it's kind of like how I got to where I am.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So what is it like when you first like would transition from like one type of a plane to another? Like what kind of train, like did you have to go through like months of training or fly in simulators? Because I know some of the planes you fly, obviously the F-35, it's not like you have a co-pilot that's kind of going to
Right.
bail you
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, so it's really intriguing. One of the things about your book that was kind of like startling or humbling is that these ladies would jump into all these different planes, like learning to fly every single different plane that are actually really difficult to fly. And thinking about like the training that we have now, you basically start in the T6 and you're in there for at least a year. And so you're just like getting really good, all the basics. And then you
Mhm.
have a lot of simulators too before you ever step into a plane. And then before you go to the T-38, which is the next step before a fighter, a lot of sims, academics. And so they're really like hounding it into you. These are all dual seats as well. And then you get to the F-35. And of course, like your first flight is solo because
Mhm.
there's no other place. And so you're doing all your training in the sims. And so
Yeah.
Um, Thinking about like sitting in a single seat fighter without having any simulator training or anything like that just kind of like blows my mind because it's quite the experience. But yeah, they definitely like set you up for success along the way.
Yeah. I remember when I was working on the book about the WASP, the Women Air Force Service Pilots, I think I was really intimidated just by all the lingo, like just how to even describe like a person sitting inside a plane and
Yeah.
what are they seeing and what do they have to do. And I would go onto YouTube and I would sit there and I'd just take notes and pause and just write down. And like, this is just like really impossible. So,
Yeah.
so my daughter, who's done some pilot training, she was able to help me, but I ended up going up to Hill Air Force Base, and I went to the
Oh, wow.
museum, and I was just walking around thinking, there's all these Air Force vets, they're there as like docents, just volunteering to help people
Yeah.
because they're retired. I thought I need to find someone that will read these flying scenes, and I finally did. I find a man that was just
Cool.
super generous, and he read. I think there's like 8 or 9 scenes in there. I had him read. And it just gave me like just that extra validation. Okay, I can present this book so that if someone like you ends up reading
Yeah.
it, they're not going to be like throwing it out the window, especially if you're flying a jet. um, and just be able to get that right because it is it's a profession that does protect our country, and it's definitely an honor to write. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't, unless it's something that was just super minor that could easily correct, but I wanted to make sure I respected the profession.
Yeah.
I so one thing I also wondered is how is it? So we know historically there's a lot of glass ceilings that had to be broken as far as women flying planes as just even as a job in the
Hmm.
beginning, but then also eventually in the military. So how have you felt like just in your experiences? Maybe you've seen some pros and cons in women, being, I guess, welcomed and accepted in the military.
Yeah. So I have a unique perspective just because I basically grew up in the military. So enlisting so young, I mean, I've been in now for 13 years. And so even just 10 years ago,
Mhm.
it's a lot different than it is now. But I'm a proponent of women in the military. And I always tell girls, because they ask me a lot about this. And I'm like, if I felt, completely undermined and disrespected, then I wouldn't stay. And I even encourage like my own sister to join the military. And that
Mhm.
comes with a lot of cons. Like I would say that overall, it's been a overwhelmingly positive experience, and I've been really fortunate to have male leaders in my chain of command in the different bases I've been at who have been super supportive. That's not to say that there aren't the ones that don't support, but I'd say that they are generally outweighed by the positive support. And also just reading the book, it like I knew there was a lot that went on and there's a lot of struggle, and just from other female mentors who have reached out to me and helped me along the way, but just like reading how hard these women fought just to like be seen, to have a seat at the table, to even volunteer to do something. um, it just shows like how far we've gone. And the time that we live in right now is kind of crazy. Like we don't know, there's a lot going
Right.
on, but I will say that I've been super supported, and those voices who speak negatively are generally drowned out, and they're not the majority. And it has also just given you like an extra strength. And I walked into this knowing that I would be a minority, knowing that I would probably be the only one, and just kind of prepared myself mentally, physically, like how is I going to deal with that, and how is I going to be an example, how is I going to like stand firm for what I believe and how I want to be treated. Because each person that does that along the way like creates a better culture and environment for the next people to come.
Yeah, that is so amazing. I think that's so important. Exactly what you said is, I mean, I think in all professions, all walks of life, you're gonna feel that kind of pushback, whether it's from, what like your situation or another situation. And so you have to decide, is this really my passion? And do I really want to go for it? And
Exactly.
how much do I want it?
Right.
So what is like kind of your typical week like as a pilot?
So typical week, I'm in the National Guard, which is awesome because we work 4 days a week, so Tuesday through Friday. Um, so basically, you get a flying schedule the week prior, so you kind of know what to expect.
Mhm.
We actually fly a lot, so I can talk about next week. I'm flying every single day, and you show up to work around 6:30 a.m. It's a lot of prepping, getting the weather, getting any notifications to airmen, closures, anything that could be affecting your flight, and then gathering all your mission data. What kind of mission are we going to do today? What kind of cards do we need to have made? And then you're kind of getting with your team, your other flight mates, you're saying, hey, did you have this prepared? What do you need? We always brief certain things. And then you basically are in the vault, which is a secret area, no windows. That's where we spend a lot of our time. And then your flight lead is briefing the mission. So it's about an hour or so where they're telling you exactly what to expect, exactly what your role is, what we're going to do, the flow. And the briefings and debriefings, especially, are super sacred in like the fighter pilot world, because that's where you
Mhm.
learn and that's where you basically stay safe. And after that, you get suited up and you basically put on all your gear, G suits, your vest, grab your helmet, and walk out to the jet. And from there, ground ops, being on the ground, getting the jet started, working with your crew chief, that can take about an hour. And then from there, you're taking off, you're flying maybe a couple hours. If you have a tanker, which is how we refuel in the air, we basically have a flying gas station that will like fly behind and they'll hook up to us. You land, hopefully you can get something to eat, and then you're in debrief. And debrief is usually what takes the longest, and that can be a couple hours depending on if you're in an upgrade, right, or not. And so you're learning all the lessons, looking at all the tapes. People ask, like, how do you have instructors instruct you when you're alone in the plane? And
Mhm.
we record everything. So you cannot hide any mistakes. They're just like analyzing everything you do. And that just is how you make better progress. And so I would say like we do upwards of 12-hour days every day. And that's just like if it's a normal flying week. Sometimes we'll do exercises. I went to Red Flag, Alaska a couple months ago. And so we'll do TDYs a lot, going out
Mhm.
there and doing these like long missions, integrating with all the other jets, which is super cool to see. You have like 50 plus planes in the sky all flying together, but your
Yeah.
day is pretty jam packed. And then on top of that, you're not just a pilot when you get to a flying squadron, you also have a desk job. And so
Mhm.
I'm in Stan Eval. And so I always thought becoming a pilot, I'm like, hey, I just get to fly all the time. This is awesome. But then the more you progress, the more you realize that flying is a privilege and you have all these other things that you have to do to make the fighter squadron kind of run. And so I always let people know, I'm like, becoming a fighter pilot is super awesome, but just know that you're going to be studying a lot pretty much all the time. You're going to be
Mhm.
working your tail off doing other things. And then anytime you get to fly, just like think of that as like the privilege and the honor that you get to do by doing all the other things.
Yeah, that is awesome. It sounds kind of overwhelming. So how do you manage like that this type of career that's pretty intense with like staying healthy and staying like mentally sharp and just and like you said, like keep progressing through your career?
Yeah, so I'd say honestly, when I did pilot training, when I first started pilot training a couple years ago, I was in the mindset that like I will suffer to any degree to make it through because,
Mhm.
being a girl, having a fighter jet, you're like, I know there's going to be eyes on me. I know there's going to be a target on my back, and I just felt the pressure to succeed well above everybody around me.
Mhm.
But what I caution people with is that to me, there's a difference between suffering and between being resilient. And I'm like, I didn't have to suffer like I did. I think I was in like a state where I'm like, I have to grind as much as possible. I will not take a breath. I will not talk to family. I'll do everything I must.
Mhm.
But looking back, that's not sustainable. And that's not all necessary either. So now I feel like I live a more balanced life where I'm like, okay, I know that my job is a lot. It's super intense, but I'm going to keep it at work. I'm going to keep it there. When I go home, I'm going to have that time to spend time with my boyfriend, to go to church, to go to the gym, to talk to my family. And it's
Mhm.
like really keeping centered on what matters most. And I think for me, the thing that's been most healthy is untying my identity from being a fighter pilot. To me, I'm like, fighter pilot is what I do, but it's not who I
Mhm.
am. And so
Mhm.
anything could happen. I could lose my medical tomorrow, and like I'm still a worthy person. And so I
Right.
think the more you realize that your job is cool, your job is necessary, but it's not who you are to your core. I think that's how I balanced myself a little bit better. And that's what I encourage girls and other people who are going through training to do as well.
Yeah, I love that because it's true that you can kind of, if you have your entire identity wrapped into something like you said, you could lose, something could happen that throws you off course. And then what do you have? So,
Right.
but anyway, it's so great to talk to you. And I'm so grateful we're able to connect. And
Thank you.
thank you for all your service too for our country. And thank you for just being who you are and being an example to a lot of girls out there that are interested in this type of career.
Yeah. And I just want to thank you really quick. I just have to say to everybody listening, like this book meant so much to me. And I think like being a female in this world, like I'm always searching for connections. And so I craved reading stories and learning about women. And I was reading this while I was on a cross country. I was essentially ferrying a jet while reading this book and just like having this moment of like, this is why I can do this is because these women, and you took the time to learn all about this. And I'll just say one of my favorite scenes was when Nancy flies the P-51 for the first time. And the way you described that was so beautiful because I like, it just brought me back to me sitting in the F-35 for the first time and just the visuals and how it felt. And so I just, this like book like just like invigorated my soul, and it just like made me be really proud for who I am and just like for the women who came before me. And I just thank you for everything you did to create such a masterpiece.
Well, thank you. That means so much.